Let's go ahead and start building our formula using the replace and length function together to replace these last three digits with nines. So here we'll start our formula. Equals, replace, and then our opening parenthesis. And what is the old text? The old text is, of course, G4. I can either type it or I can just click on it. It'll insert it there for me. And comma. And now here's the tricky part. How do we determine the starting number? Because we can't just go. Remember, we're doing all characters, okay? So the $sign is 1, the 3 is 2, the 5 is 3, and the 1 is the fourth character for this particular number. But if this number was, 3571, then that wouldn't be the case. It would be, the third number that we'd want to replace, and I'll illustrate that here in just a minute. So the point here is we need to know how long the text string is, but then what we can do is backtrack and go to, go 3 characters back from whatever that value is. So we're going to do that with the length function. We'll do length, opening parenthesis, and we'll send that same thing, G4. But what we need to do then is based on that length. In this case, watch this. If we count these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's 7 characters. If we subtract 3, that leaves us with the number 4, right? And in this case, the fourth character is the one that we want to start with. Since we're doing the decimals in its, sense here, it's always going to be that same formula. Whatever the length of the string is, minus 3 will tell us the position that we want to start replacing characters. So we're going to take that length, subtract 3, and then I'll put my comma. So when the replace function starts to evaluate its parameters, when it gets to the part about where to start, it's going to run the length function, send this G4 to it. The length function is going to come back and say the length of that G4 string is 7. And then it will subtract 3 from that, and the result will be 4. So the replace function is going to go to G4, go to the fourth character, and then we determine what it's going to replace. We're going to replace 4 characters because we want to replace this 1, the little period there, the 7, and the 1 for the change. So the dollar position, the period, and the cents positions. Now we're going to replace the period with another period, but we have to take it into account. Okay, so we're going to replace 4 characters, then comma, and what's the new text going to be? What are we going to replace it with? Well, I'm going to do a double quote, and then the number 9, period, 99, and a double quote again, and then my closing parenthesis to close everything off. Now remember, the biggest problem people run into typically with functions like this where they use nested functions and formulas is getting those parentheses in the right place. They've always got to match up. You will always have the same number of closing parentheses as you do opening parentheses. And you'll see I have 2 opening parentheses and 2 closing parentheses. They're not going to always show up, 2 opening and then 2 closing. You might actually have an opening, a closing, an opening, an opening, a closing, an opening, a closing, closing. It can get pretty confusing, but you will always have the same number of each. Watch what happens, though, when we hit the enter key on that formula. All right, we get 359.99. It does exactly what we wanted it to do. Let's see, though, if it actually works. Okay? We're going to go over here. We're going to type just $1.25. And we'll go to the next cell. I'm going to take that formula, same thing that we created earlier. I'm going to click and drag to fill that down. And that gives us $1.88 as our markup. Now, watch what's going to happen here. And in this case, we're going to need some different logic to help figure things out, because I've got a feeling if our formula works right, this thing is going to be marked up huge. Let's try it, though. We're going to click right here. We're going to click the drop down. If everything works right, the fixed retail price of this is going to be $9.99. So let's click and drop down, and there we go, $9.99. So what it does is it gets the length of this text, this string of text. It subtracts 3, and that tells it the position to start replacing, and that is this one position currently. Okay, so what we would have to do in order to get this to behave accurately is put in some logic there. And we are going to do that in the next video. We're going to put in some if logic that will help us determine how we should react with smaller numbers like $1.25. If this was like, let's say, $12.50, and we'll go ahead and pull all of our formulas down. And we'll pull this one down too. That works out just fine. So what we need to address is small numbers like $1.25, and we need to address the thousands. Let's say it was 1,256. When we pull that over right now, that's what we get, and that's the result. Now the only thing is, the only problem that I have, it's, the math's all working okay, but for thousands, for currency, people are usually used to seeing that comma there. So that's kind of like two wrenches that are in our works here, is one being small numbers like $1.25, and the other being larger numbers like 1,256. So we're going to attempt to tackle those two problems in the next couple of videos.